Warmly welcoming you to How Does She Do It, the podcast, with me, your host, Jo Ferroni. Join me on my journey as I explore finding a gentle balance in both business and life, because being kind to ourselves is our superpower. Hello, you lovely ladies, and Happy New Year. Oh my goodness, it's 2022. I do hope you were able to find some time over the festive season to do the things you wanted to do at the pace that worked for you, and there was some lovely downtime thrown in as well. I'm blessed to have enjoyed some time in Devon, overlooking the stunning Aqua Sea and taking a very relaxed and gentle pace. The vibe was one of nourishment, and I have come home feeling deeply replenished. Today's conversation is with Suzy Reading, and I'm delighted to welcome her to the podcast as we begin this new year. I've learned so much from Suzy over the years through her books, magazine articles, and social media too, and so to be in conversation with her was an honour and a joy. Suzy shares so much wisdom and guidance with me, and with that in mind, I should have a notebook to hand whilst you listen today. I believe that you're going to truly feel all that Suzy shares as she speaks with true authenticity, love and deep care. And so, a little bit about Suzy, for those of you who don't know. She's a mother of two, an author, a chartered psychologist and yoga teacher, not to mention being a self-care inspiration to so many of us. It was Suzy's lived experience of motherhood colliding with the terminal illness of her father that sparked her passion for self-care, which she has subsequently channeled to help people manage their stress, emotions and energetic bank balance. Growing up on the northern beaches of Sydney and now residing in the UK, Suzy writes for numerous magazines, is a founding member of the Nourish app, as well as being the author of numerous books focusing on self-care, and she has just recently released her very first journal, And Breathe. Do head over to find her on Instagram at Suzy Reading, and please enjoy the show. Suzy, welcome to the podcast. It's an absolute joy to welcome you for this, our very first episode of 2022. How are you?
Oh, I'm well, thank you, Jo. Thank you so much for your kind invitation.
It's lovely to have you, and such a treat for me, as I'm one of your long-standing fans who has taken so much from your words of wisdom, both across your social media platforms, but also across your books as well. So it would be wonderful to know what came before everything that is in your life today. Have you always worked for yourself?
Oh, Jo, do you know what? There have been some absolutely fantastic twists and turns to my career. I haven't always worked for myself, but we're talking, that's a very, very long time ago. So originally I trained as a psychologist, and I had a number of different contracts there, working in organizational psychology. And then I accidentally moved to the UK. It was meant to be for a 2-month holiday that turned into 7 years. And there were some parts of my psychology degree that weren't recognised here in the UK by the BPS. And because I thought, oh, look, I'm not going to be here for very long, that's fine. I'll fall back on my personal training qualifications. That's what I did. That was my job going through uni. So I started my own personal training business. And from there evolved health coaching. I did yoga teacher training qualifications. So I moved into private yoga, which is a beautiful therapeutic application of yoga. And then we moved back to Australia to start our family. And for me, motherhood collided with the terminal illness of my father, and it was such a tough chapter. And that lived experience really set me back on the path to wanting to work as a psychologist, because I felt like I'd earned my stripes as a human being to be able to work in that realm. So I started my private practice as a psychologist, doing walk and talks and infusing all of those other threads of my business. So I still prescribe exercise and there's breath work in there, but I'm working as a psychologist again, and I'm working for myself. And I love the flexibility that brings.
I love learning things that I didn't know before. And obviously there are parts of your story that I have heard because I've read about them in your books. First of all, I just love to pick up on the fact that you worked as a personal trainer during university. So that's a really grown-up thing to do, to take that initiative, to train, and then to be helping others at such a young age yourself. How was that?
Do you know, it was a way of turning my hobby into, a way of providing financial support. I loved it. And I'd been an athlete throughout my teens. So it was, I guess all of the decisions I've made have been sort of guided by my passions. And I was so lucky that I had that qualification to fall back on when I moved to the UK. I had no idea that Australian personal trainers were held in such high regard. And I ran that business for 7 years in the heart of Marylebone. And it was a thriving business. And do you know what? Had I been back in Australia, I'm sure all of my friends and family would have been like, what are you doing? You've got a master's degree in psychology. What are you doing in the gym? But in actual fact, I learned so much from working with thousands of different bodies and understanding how movement is so therapeutic that, while it didn't make sense at the time, it makes sense now. So if anyone's thinking, gosh, what am I doing career-wise? It'll all make sense one day. And we learn different things from different roles, and just keep following what you're passionate about.
That's something that very much comes across strongly from you, that you're heart-led, and you can tell that in all the areas of work that you do, there is such a love, such a dynamicism there, because I guess it has come from within. It's definitely something that shows on the outside, even though I know a lot of it is on the inside, actually. And I also hope you won't mind me talking about you said how there was a collision in your life at the time where your father passed away. Could you talk a little bit around that? Being a new mother and experiencing that grief must have been like nothing else.
It was, for me, that was my first real life crisis. And, when I look back on my timeline, I've been so blessed with real stability and deep nourishment. I lived in the same house all my life. I went to the same school from the age of 4 to 18. Went straight to university, had a figure skating career where, it kept me engaged outside of school. There was always focus. Yeah, it was becoming a mum at the same time as losing my dad. And it was actually quite a long, drawn out process. When we moved back to Sydney, it was really clear that my dad was unwell. He was actually a doctor himself, and he left no stone unturned. He went to see every practitioner under the sun, and no one could identify what was happening for him. But he was clearly very unwell. And he had a breathing failure when I was 40 weeks pregnant, and rushed to hospital in an ambulance, and we were told it was unlikely that he would make it. But do you know what? The tenacity of that man, he did make it, but he was never well enough to return home. So he survived for 15 months. He was in and out of intensive care, nursing homes. But the blessing is he got to meet Charlotte, and we had the opportunity to say what needed to be said. We were very lucky to have those opportunities. But from that experience, my goodness, I did an awful lot of learning and growing. And I'm so passionate about sharing that experience because so many people will say to me, I should be coping better. I should be more resilient. And I want to share my story because as someone who'd had, every opportunity under the sun, stability and nourishment, good education, a psychologist, yoga teacher, personal trainer, think about what's in my toolkit. I was floored by life.
Yeah.
Even with all of those skills and tools, I still got knocked for six. And that's because no one is immune. It doesn't matter what tools you have. No one is immune from stress, overwhelm, burnout, anxiety, grief. And I think that experience of that crisis certainly helped me hone my toolkit. But it really showed me how important it is that I take care of myself and extend compassion towards myself. And that's what I love sharing with others. And it's such a privilege to do this work.
Wow, there's just so much to take away from what you've just shared. I purposely don't take notes when I record and have conversations with people because I want to be fully engaged in the conversation, but there's so much going on in my head. Oh, I'm going to pick out that. I want to pick out that. So I apologize if I don't pick out everything that I meant to here, but something that came up for me there was that I can't remember the wording you used exactly, but it was around, should we be able to cope with this?
Mm-hmm.
I've got all these things in my toolkit. And also I certainly know people, and I'm guilty myself as well. When we're in a bad place, we tend to look out to other people in a bad place or in a worse place than we're at or than we perceive we're at, and almost can be quite hard on ourselves in terms of saying, I need to be able to deal with this. Everyone else has got worse things going on or what have you. Or like in your case, you had all this training and what have you, but at the end of the day, we are human beings, and however resilient we try to be, there, like you say, there is no escaping the fact that things are going to knock us for six.
And I think that's such a resonant common thread. I'm hearing, coupled with this sense of I should be more resilient, there's this sense of someone else has got it much worse, so I should be able to just get on with it. But the fact is, someone else's burden doesn't negate our own, whether it's smaller or not. If we're being squeezed by life, we're being squeezed by life. If there's a wound, there's a wound. And it doesn't matter if someone else's wound is greater. We still have a right to feel. And I think it's so important that we've challenged this image of resilience. And I think, when we say the word resilient, the kind of image that pops up for most people is someone standing up tall in like a superhero stance, where, they've got sort of this invisible coat of armor that just pings off pain, suffering, negative thoughts, difficult emotions. But let's be really honest, that isn't what resilience is. Resilience is not getting bowled over. Resilience is just being able to get back up. Yeah. And what I find is that with the toolkit that I have, it's not that life doesn't hurt. It's just that I don't stay down as long, or I don't sink quite as low down. And I would love to offer up another image of resilience being curled up in a little ball and having a bloody big cry, because that's the healing, right? So that actually coping can look like having a breakdown. That can actually pave the way for us getting back up on our feet, because we've actually acknowledged the loss. We've witnessed our feelings, and we're moving through them in a safe and healthy way, rather than saying, shouldn't feel that, mustn't feel that, come on, get up, let's go.
Yeah, squashing it all down. I do believe that releasing our emotion, I don't know about your childhood, but the messaging that we used to get, and I think possibly is still around now for children, is almost, come on, you're brave, stand up, don't worry about it,
dust yourself off, here's a sweetie, you'll be right.
And I've got to be careful what I say, but I certainly encourage my children that to cry and to let emotions out, or to curl up in a ball and just be, is not a negative thing. It's a really strong thing. And I'm bringing up two boys in a very different world, and I can't say it enough to them. And I really think that it's important that we share this with our children. But first of all, if we can model it ourselves, that is the strongest and most powerful way to educate them and help them, or give them the permission as they move forward in life.
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's so much that I want to say around that emotional health aspect, that, you said the feeling of the emotions is important. When you think about it, every emotion has an energetic charge, right?
Yeah.
And if you don't allow that charge to move through you, it stays in the body.
Yeah.
So we need safe ways of expressing ourselves. And if you look at, the effects of crying, the effects of breathing, sighing, they have an impact on our nervous system. So, if we can gift our children with, sweetie, of course, that really hurts. Have a good cry, let it out, because that actually is an essential part of the healing process from a physiological point of view. And yeah, you're absolutely spot on. This is not just something that we have a conversation about. It's not just something we encourage them to do. If we can actually give ourselves permission to feel. And I think, throughout the pandemic, a lot of parents have been saying, is it okay for me to share some of my emotions with my children? Hell yes.
Yeah.
Yes. In age-appropriate ways. Yeah. But can we just allow them in? Can we let them in? Yeah. And can we work on toolkits together? This is what I love about kids is, when you sort of think about, well, what can we do in this moment to support ourselves? Your kids will generate a whole bunch of options that you haven't even thought of. We can co-create this stuff because, like you said, this wasn't modeled for us, but we can learn at the same time as our kids.
Yeah. And I love doing that. I think it's so empowering for them. I think I've definitely shared my highs and my lows. That's something I do in the How Does She Do It community. I want to encourage people because as adults, not even just parents, but as adults, we're almost told to, shine our bright light and then hide away the struggles and what have you. But I want to encourage people to share the struggles as well. And the same with my boys. And I do let them know when I'm having a tough time. And they actually now know. They'll sometimes, my youngest, who's now 10, so he would have been a bit younger, he sometimes said to me, Mummy, why don't you go and have a meditation? Because you're struggling right now. And you know that a meditation always makes you feel good or better, maybe not good, but it can increase, your level of being able to cope, I guess. And just little things like that, I think, can be really beneficial. So it's okay not to be on top form all of the time. So with that in mind, I think we should touch on the pandemic for a minute. I'd love to know whether you think that the pandemic has almost encouraged or enabled people to talk more around self-care and have more honest conversations about how they're feeling. Would you say that you've noticed a change?
Definitely. When you think about it, going into lockdown, there were so many things that we would normally do to nourish ourselves. There were so many aspects of life that helped us feel human, right? And in the absence of those, we became crystal clear on the impact that those things had, right? So I think it then led to conversations of, okay, so if we can't do that, what can we do? And I love that I had a lot of opportunities to share my, slightly, let's be honest, I think what did the Daily Mail call me? Slightly bonkers, whatever. But these things work, right? Absolutely. So yeah, we can't get together and go to the pub. But what can we do to facilitate a sense of connection, staying current, communicating care? If we can't get to the gym, what can we do at home? So yeah, there were some really fruitful conversations that came, but some very big lessons as well, and some big losses, really big losses.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that grief and loss is a big part of your offering, being able to have these conversations, because again, a little bit like the, not crying kind of thing. It is a thing that I think we've been modeled almost. We keep that side of things very private and very quiet. I would say that the way that you support people in that kind of area, not only through your books, but obviously through your professional services as well, must be a very wonderful and bespoke way of working, because you're combining your professional wisdom with your lived experience as well. I should imagine in this time, more than ever, that is really, really needed and valued.
Even though grief is a universal experience, we just don't talk about it enough, do we?
No.
And you know what? Even as a psychologist and having had my own experience of grief, when my friends incur losses, there's still, for me, this very human impulse of, I want to help, I want to say the right thing, but I'm scared of getting it wrong.
Really?
Yeah. Even with the toolkit that I've got, I'm still aware of, I don't want to get it wrong here. And I think one thing I hear quite often is that in the midst of grief, people sort of feel like friends and family do a little bit of a disappearing act, because it's this concern of not wanting to get it wrong that we So we've got to talk about it. And the fact is, in my grief journey, I needed something completely different to somebody else, but that's okay. So let's just ask. Can we say, I want to be here for you. I want to support you. I'm not sure how best to do that. Can we talk about what that might look like? I think that can be helpful. And yet other people who have had their own grief experience will say, make suggestions, offer up suggestions. So let's just have a conversation around it. And let's also identify that grief is not just the loss of life, the loss of loved ones. We experience grief with lost hopes and imagined futures, lost opportunities to connect, lost time, even, the loss of autonomy or the ability to express ourselves, or the loss of financial stability. These are all very valid reasons to grieve.
Yeah. But I believe that you just sharing that list will help people enormously, because so many people are struggling with one or many of those things that you just shared, and might be questioning, why can't I cope right now? Why am I struggling so much? Because they're almost lessening how they see what they're struggling with.
Mm-hmm.
But it is massive. It's absolutely huge. And going back to the grief around loss of, say, family or friends or what have you, that was an absolute light bulb moment for me, because I am a bit like you, very, very careful. I wouldn't want to, you don't want to get anything wrong when someone is grieving. So the fact that you have just offered me that very simple, just ask what they need, is mind-blowing for me. Thank you so much. And it really can be just that tiny thing to open up a conversation, which is what they need, or what they might tell you they don't need at that point.
Yeah, that's it. Sometimes we want to talk about it. Sometimes we don't want to talk about it. Different things in different moments. It's not even this is how it looks like for one person. It's like it looks different on different days.
Yeah.
But let's just be brave and have a conversation and just keep showing up.
Something I adore about the way that you speak with your audience, and I don't doubt that many people listening to this today will be part of your audience, is the way that you share with such realness. And it's hard for me to describe it, but you're very caring, you're very nurturing, you're just the loving words that we need to be saying to ourselves, which is magical. But you're also not afraid of a bit of straight talking. It's almost like there's that nurturing but straight talking, sometimes in equal measure. And they can be some very powerful things that you say that I think we're all thinking, but we don't necessarily say. And I've found those messages on your social media to be so very comforting during this difficult time, because we can all doubt ourselves and think we should be doing better, or we could be doing more, or what have you. And we put quite a lot of pressure on ourselves, I think. And some of the things that you say to us almost give us a lightning bolt between the eyes, kind of waking us up and going, oh yeah, hang on a minute. This has been an incredibly challenging time. Of course we're struggling, and it's okay to struggle.
Oh, I'm so pleased. All my little notes to self have landed for you too. I think, the single most healing sentence I've ever heard was when I was told by my postnatal depression counsellor, I don't know whether it was PND or grief or exhaustion, but she was enormously helpful. Yeah. She said to me, sweetheart, of course you feel as you do. And that for me was just so therapeutic. Yeah. And so I guess what I'm attempting to do on social media is just remind people of, this is what you've just experienced. Of course you feel as you do, right?
Yeah.
And it's just planting those seeds of self-compassion.
Yeah, they are deeply rooted seeds of self-compassion, which are so very valuable to us. And if we can keep watering them as well, the roots will be growing strong. And that is exactly what you're helping us all to do, which is huge, and the biggest act of self-compassion.
Oh, it's such a privilege. Social media gets a bad rap, but honestly, I've found incredible connection and sustenance. For me, it's like intention setting. I love to do a little post in the morning before the house awakes. And to be honest with you, I do it then because if I get up, it's like my kids just ping into action.
Of
and
course.
we've got creaky floorboards as well. So I lie in bed and I write a little post. It's sort of my little intention setting for the day. And then there's such a beautiful community of kindred spirits that chime in and offer their insight and their support. And there's such heart there, and it's tangible and it's real. So, I'm really grateful to you, Jo, for being part of it and welcoming me into your community as well, because it feeds the soul. This is the connection that feeds the soul, especially in these wonky times where it's not just that there are still restrictions, we're still finding our feet. And I still haven't seen my mum. My mum's in Australia. It's over 2 years since we've seen each other. And we need all the encouragement and tenderness and kind companionship possible. And that's what I find in social media.
Yeah. Yeah, you're so right. It does get a bad rap, but you don't have to look far, I don't think, to find such incredible, inspiring and kind-hearted souls. And they're the ones that we need to cling on to. We all need to be in this together, because that connection and that shared belief, mindset, all of the things.
Just shared humanity. Like we're just walking the path together. Like that is it.
Yeah. And it's interesting because I do sometimes think, how does Suzy do it? Funnily enough. And I do think that the notes that you put out every day just speak so directly to our hearts. And now it makes complete sense. They are written every morning and they come from your heart. So they're what you need to be listening to yourself.
It's my self-care. Yeah. It's literally my self-care that I'm sharing with everyone else. So it's magic when it strikes a chord.
I would like to just ask you how it feels to have such a positive influence by sharing your wisdom and your toolkit, which you've already mentioned a few times, with so many people.
Do you know what? It's enormously validating. And it also helps me make peace with that life experience. And I hate this sense of we must seek silver linings. It's not about that. But with the passage of time, the work that I do is so much stemming from what I experienced with Dad. I know that it makes him proud. Yeah. And it's such a blessing to be able to be with people when they need it the most. It took me a year to find someone when I was in that very dark place. It took me a year to find, it wasn't just to find a practitioner, it was like life logistics. Like, how do I physically get somewhere with a baby and cars and So to be able to provide some of that soothing by Instagram where people can just check in, it's a real blessing. Yeah.
Yeah. That's the accessibility is wonderful. It's really beautiful. And I love that your dad is intrinsically a part of your ongoing journey and all that you offer. Oh, that's wonderful. Before we get on to the questions that I like to ask every guest on the podcast, I did just want to ask you one little thing that I think might come up for people who are leading lives with all sorts of different things going on, and they're being dragged in lots of different directions. I do believe that self-care is really important, and I think that I notice people will almost go through phases of taking on healthy habits. They might start meditation, or they might start going out for a daily walk or something. It could be any number of things. I just wanted to ask you from experience, really, how can you guide people to ensure that they stick with these healthy habits?
I think what helps people is to sort of identify what's the scaffolding that we need in our lives to be able to function.
Yeah.
So I call these sort of like the health non-negotiables. And these are the same for everybody. We all need as much access to quality sleep as possible. I don't want to stress anyone out there. If you can't sleep, rest is just as good.
Yeah.
Okay. And in the absence of time for that, we've got our breathing. We can work with our breath.
Yeah.
But some kind of soothing for the nervous system, sleep, rest, relaxation, breathing. We need to feed ourselves so we can think straight. We need hydration. And then there are other things. We need movement. We need movement for not just abdominal muscles and toned thighs. We need it for access to a sense of humor. We need it for our mood. We need it for our mental health.
Yeah.
That's the scaffolding. And then when it comes to other sort of healthy practices, if we do the same things all the time in the gym, our bodies plateau. Now, in psychology, it's called hedonic adaptation. If you were to do the same gratitude practice every day without changing it, it may actually lose its effectiveness over time, or it might not feel as juicy. There's nothing wrong with change and evolution in how we nourish ourselves, right? So there are times in life where I am really excited about doing lots of running, and I will do that. And there are other times in life where it's like, do you know what? I need to switch that up. My quads, my hips are saying, sweetie, it's time for some stretches. And I might do yoga religiously. It's fine for that. Let it evolve. But what we do need to make sure is that, one, we're meeting our health non-negotiables as best as possible and prioritizing those. And basically anything that interferes with our ability to sleep, can we just acknowledge we need to be mindful of that? It's not just we need to do these things. For me, my warning signs are when I'm starting to do things that interfere with my ability to sleep. Caffeine, alcohol, screen time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that for me is a warning sign. When I'm picking up my phone and like going between email, WhatsApp, Instagram, that's my body saying, hey, ease back. You need to take some kind of swift restorative action. But it's fine for there to be fluidity and change and different seasons. And, that's life, isn't it? In winter, maybe we need a completely different way of moving than we do in summer. But it's just making sure that there is the scaffolding, but then there's also some kind of self-care habit, but how that looks like it can change. And that needs to change in response to life's variables, how much time we have, how much energy we have, and what we need.
I see that there's a permission, if you like, there. What you're saying is we don't need to be regimented about these things. I also feel that what you were talking about with the sleep, or what might get in the way of it, that being conscious and being aware of our actions and checking in with what we're doing, how we're feeling, and doing, it doesn't even have to be a long drawn out summary of where we're at right now, but it could just be, wow, I haven't slept so well the last couple of nights. What were my evenings looking like? I certainly know that, my hubby and I, since we've been during these pandemic times, we drink a bit more tea and coffee than normal, which doesn't sound overly dreadful, but it was when we noticed that actually we weren't sleeping, we were sleeping quite fitfully, that we're like, perhaps we should just try experimenting. Let's have a few more herbal teas. Let's not just have coffee because we're here all the time. And it's wonderful when you actually see the evidence that making that change can make a difference. So yeah, I wonder where the little check-ins, so people don't feel overwhelmed to think that they've got to overhaul their entire life to have that scaffolding in place, but just to check in with all the little bits, because that's what makes us up, isn't it?
It is. Gosh, there's so much wisdom in what you've just said there, Jo. It's just the skill of self-awareness. And then it needs to be coupled with us giving ourselves permission to do what we need to do. And from my perspective, that experience I had of energetic bankruptcy, of just feeling like I had nothing left in the tank. And I knew that for me to be actually able to be the kind of mum I wanted to be, I had to look after myself. And if I couldn't do it for me, I had to do it for Charlotte. From that experience, I genuinely don't feel guilty about nourishing myself. And when I'm talking about nourishing myself, I'm talking about breathing practices, compassion, kind words, a yoga pose, going out for a walk. I don't feel guilty about any of that stuff. I still might feel guilty about, going out for a whole afternoon and, extricating myself from family life. No one is immune from that. But never do I say to myself, is this okay for me to do it? Hell yeah, I have to do it because my kids need me to keep going. But it's in awareness. It's knowing where we're at and just that little moment of checking in. And I think that's an art form in itself. So to begin with, we might need to actually say to ourselves, I'm going to do a little morning inventory. Where am I at? Where's my head at? How's my breathing feeling? How's my body feeling? What's going on? What emotions are circulating? Check in that way and just build the habit of checking in. That is self-care, that awareness. And then from there, then we can start looking at the toolkits of what we can do to either support ourselves where we're at or to think about how it is that we'd like to feel and what would take us there. And that forms the heart of every book I've written. So there's lots of inspiration there, but what has to come first is that check-in. So I'm so pleased that you brought that to the table, Jo.
Yeah. We need to open our eyes and just witness where we're at this time and take it gently with ourselves.
All the tenderness.
So we're coming to the end of our conversation, and obviously I could carry on for hours, but I very much value your time, so I won't carry on for hours. I would love to know what the toughest thing is for you in working for yourself.
Mm-hmm. It's evolved over time. I would say the toughest thing in those early days was a sense of, I felt really lonely. And I was working in a team of really talented personal trainers, but I was doing something slightly different. And I always sort of felt like, oh gosh, is this okay? Now, with 20 years hindsight, and with, I've done lots more continuing education, I knew I was onto something. But now I'm sort of part of a community of like-minded people, and we're working with the body as psychologists, and it's incredibly affirming and exciting and inspiring. That was really challenging in the beginning. But now I would find the challenge is in pacing myself. It's so hard when you're self-employed. We feel this sort of impulse to take on everything that comes up. And every book I get, I'm like, is this the last one I'll ever get to write? There's this fear around that. So it's managing energy and healthy boundaries around work. I'm still working on that.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. And the loneliness thing is what I brought up as my toughest thing about working for myself, actually, because Pam Cotman interviewed me for one of the December podcasts. And so I feel you on your earlier experience of the loneliness. And I think that's really interesting as well, what you said about pacing yourself. It's funny, isn't it? Because we don't have someone, I guess maybe it's different because you've got a publisher and they will impose deadlines for your writing work. But everything else is just your own, it's your own destiny, isn't it? And we're not very good sometimes, I'm speaking for myself, at pacing ourselves because we can't necessarily step out of ourselves and sort of see the bigger picture. We're just head down and keep going. And what is the best thing about working for yourself?
From my perspective, I'm so grateful that I've been able to allow life to inform me. And all of the different chapters of my life are woven into how I work with people. So, my career is sort of coupled with my own personal evolution. And I love that. It's so amazing that I've gone from being in a gym prescribing exercise to, writing books about how to create healthy movement habits. And it's exciting. Yeah, it's never the same. And who knows what the next chapter will hold. Well, let's see.
I love that. Yeah, totally entwined, your experiences and constantly evolving. I'm excited for you. That's wonderful. Thank you. And the final question I ask at the end of every podcast is around how does she do it? Because I don't believe that we can do it all. I feel that we're given the messaging that we can do it all, but I don't necessarily think that's true. So I wanted to ask if you can tell me one thing that you do or perhaps don't do in your life to keep yourself remaining on track and healthy and happy.
It's not one thing, but it is kind of one thing. I have a team of angels. I have an acupuncturist I see monthly. I have an osteopath I see periodically. I have a tax accountant, and I go, here, thank you very much. And I have a film club. We go and see a film every month, and I've got a beautiful, loving husband who props me up and keeps me going. So, I think that's such an important message, because I talk about self-care. What I don't want people to feel is that you've got to do it all on your own. I don't want anyone to feel like they have to shoulder their burden alone. We all need the love and support of other people. So, yeah, I've got a whole team of angels.
That's beautiful. Yeah, because we do talk about self-care so much. So it is always about us, the buck stops with us kind of thing. Mm-hmm. But less often talk about those around us, those we surround ourselves with. That's brilliant. What a great mix of angels as well. You shared so much today. I'm so grateful, and I'm already looking forward to listening back to the episode to continue learning from you. And I know that my audience are going to take so much away as well. Before we wrap up the conversation, though, I'd just like to ask if you have anything you'd like to share with my listeners, what you've got coming up, maybe.
Yeah, I've got 2 new book babies, which is very exciting. I've got my first journal, And Breathe, which is all about helping people identify the healthy habits that resonate for them and to think about how to break those down into manageable action steps. So I love that I've had the opportunity to be a little bit more interactive.
Yeah.
And then I've got Sit to Get Fit coming out in February, which, yes, it's a bit of a provocative title, but it's written in response to, I think, what we've all experienced in lockdown. Like we all know that movement is good for us, but I think what we've learnt firsthand is that being sedentary has its own consequences. So I love with that book, I was able to bring all of my different chapters of careers together. And there's a 28-day plan to help people sit better, sit less, move more, but also to undo some of the stress that we experience as a result of sitting in front of screens.
Wonderful. And never a better time, really, with the pandemic and what people have been through. No doubt people enjoyed not having to get on a busy commuter train, and the fact that they could perhaps work from an earlier time in the morning to get more done. But it came with its consequences, didn't it? All of that sitting.
We need some unraveling, Jo.
Yeah. And that's just what this will do. And where can people find you, Suzy? Online?
Well, come and hang out with me on Instagram. I'm there, Suzy Reading. I do a Monday micro moment session. So there's an opportunity for us to come together as a community. And I love that that also provides a whole library of resources that people can come and sample. What are these accessible practices that we can weave into our day? So we haven't talked about how to actually do it, but it's all there on my Instagram feed. So come and hang out with me there.
Fabulous. I know people will if they don't already. So thank you so much. Wow. Well, I do think that 2022 is going to be a wonderful year for you. I'm definitely going to put my order in for the new books, and I can't wait to see what does come next, because there will be more books and there's so much more that you have to share with us all. And I just want to thank you so much for coming and speaking with me today.
Oh, Jo, it's been cathartic. I feel like I've had a little therapy session at the same time. Thank you for your compassion. Thank you for your insight. And thank you for walking the path with me, side by side.
Thank you so much for listening today. I really hope you enjoyed the episode. If you did, I'd love you to take a moment to share and subscribe too. Come and join me over at How Does She Do It Life on both Facebook and Instagram. And until we speak again, I wish you a wonderful week ahead.